The millionaire screamed at his secretary, but her response left everyone in shock forever. In the heart of Manhattan, the skyscrapers loomed like sentinels, casting shadows over the bustling streets below. Inside the pristine glass walls of Ashwood Enterprises, chaos erupted. Larry Ashwood, the billionaire known for his icy demeanor, was red-faced and furious. He stood in his immaculate office, veins bulging at his temples, screaming at his secretary, Sarah. The walls shuddered as if the very building could feel the tension crackling in the air. It was a scene that everyone outside the office could sense something monumental was about to happen. How could you let this slip? This was the biggest deal of my career. His voice echoed, drowning out the city's chatter. The onlookers in the hallway exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of fear and curiosity. But what happened next sent gasps rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Sarah, who had always been the composed right-hand woman, stood firm. Her eyes widened, glimmering with a mix of defiance and something darker. "What do you mean, my fault? You're the one who ignored the warning signs," she shot back, her voice steady, cutting through the tension like a knife. The silence that followed felt like thunder in their ears. In that moment, it didn't just feel like an argument, it felt like a declaration of war. That's when the whispers filled the air. People began to murmur, questioning, speculating, judging. The office staff, normally a tightly knit unit, now stood on the precipice, eyes darting as they awaited the fallout. Was this the moment Sarah would finally break under the pressure, or would she spill the secrets she held tightly? Then, as if on cue, Sarah reached into her briefcase. It was a move so subtle yet so loaded, jaws dropped in anticipation. What was she about to reveal? Suddenly, the atmosphere thickened. Hearts raced. Everyone leaned in. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." As tension hung thick in the air, the unthinkable happened. Sarah pulled out a stack of papers. A contract maybe? Or a confession? The room felt like it was holding its breath, desperate to know what lay ahead. "It's not just your empire that's at stake, Larry," she began, her voice steady yet tinged with something almost electric. Even the air seemed to tremble, waiting for the bomb to drop. What revelation was about to shake the very foundations of Ashwood Enterprises? Was it betrayal, an unexpected ally, or something more sinister? Everyone held their breaths, locked in a moment that would rewrite their fates forever. The whispers grew louder, swirling around the office like a storm eager to unleash its fury. Larry stood frozen, eyes fixed on Sarah, as she laid the documents on his pristine desk. They seemed innocuous at first glance, but something dark simmered beneath their surface. "What do you mean, your empire? What could you possibly know?" His voice dripped with skepticism, but the tremor hinted at a vulnerability he'd long buried. With trembling fingers, Sarah flipped through the pages. Faint gasps erupted from the onlookers, eyes wide with anticipation. "These are not just any contracts, Larry. These are the very secrets that could unravel everything you've built." She wouldn't back down. The glimmer in her eyes gave her an almost ethereal glow. This was no ordinary confrontation. He stepped closer, fists clenched at his sides. The air was thick with the electric anticipation of revelation. "I don't care what you think you have," he snapped, but there was an edge, a flicker of fear dancing in his voice. With a swift motion, Sarah revealed the first paper. "These aren't from me, they're from your inner circle. From people you trust." She thrust it into his hand, the weight of betrayal collapsing onto him like lead. Larry's face paled as he scanned the page, words blurring into an incomprehensible haze. What is this?" The room fell into a deathly hush, the once loud heartbeat of the office now beating like a quiet drum in the background. Your closest associates, she continued, her voice low and steady, they've been leaking information to your competitors. Your entire operation is at risk. And it's not just business, it's your reputation, your entire legacy. Murmurs spread like fire through the crowd, each gasp echoing the disbelief. Who could do such a thing? That kind of treachery was reserved for the most desperate, and Larry had always been a man who believed in absolute loyalty. Impossible, he spat, but his gaze faltered as memories flooded back. The whispered conversations behind closed doors, the sudden disappearances of trusted allies. It all clicked painfully into place, and guilt gnawed at his insides. What I'm pointing out, Larry, Sarah pressed on, emboldened now, is that the lines have been drawn. You treat people like pawns, and this is the reckoning you've brought upon yourself. Just as Larry was about to retort, the office phone rang shrilly, slicing through the moment. It was David, his right-hand man, and not just anyone. He was the last person Larry expected to hear from right now. Larry. You need to come downstairs, he stammered, panic lacing his words. There's been a situation, it's about Sarah. The urgency in his voice clenched Larry's stomach like a fist. All eyes shifted to Sarah, whose expression now shifted from defiance to dread. Anxiety prickled at her skin. What else was going wrong? What situation? The words caught in Larry's throat. The room felt smaller but infinitely darker. They're here. And they're demanding answers, David breathed heavily over the line. The crowd held its breath, time suspended in a thick fog of anticipation. What threats loomed just beyond the sanctum of the office walls? Fear and the scent of betrayal hung palpably in the air. What did you say? Sarah whispered, her voice a frail echo of its former strength. Outside the glass walls, the gathering storm of impending chaos began to take shape. But before Larry could respond, the lights flickered, and a low rumble echoed through the halls. The office, once a fortress of triumph, now felt like a battleground poised for war. As the grip tightened around all present, Sarah turned to face Larry, determination backlighting her features. If we're going to face this, we need to find out who's really behind this. But the question loomed heavy, would they uncover the truth before it was too late? Larry's heart raced, each thud echoing against the walls of the office. Anger battled panic in his chest as he scanned the faces of his employees. Fear, curiosity, and a hint of treachery reflected back at him. Could one of them be in on it? A betrayal so deep that it threatened everything he had worked for. Stay here, he barked, his voice firm but breaking slightly. He couldn't let them see his uncertainty. As he turned on his heel, he caught a glimpse of Sarah's face, a mix of desperation and resolve. There was something about her, that shimmer of determination, that unnerved him more than the threat waiting downstairs. Hastily, he made his way to the stairwell, every step heavy with dread. What awaited him below? The muffled sounds of hushed voices seeped through the door, a storm brewing beneath the surface. Sweat mingled with fear on his brow as he descended, the air thickening with the weight of unspoken truths. The moment he pushed the door open, an electric tension sliced through the crowd gathered in the lobby. There they were, 4 men, their stances rigid, confidence pouring out of them like poison. They looked like wolves cloaked in business suits, each man exuding a threat far beyond his tailored appearance. Larry. There you are, one of them, a tall man with piercing blue eyes, called out as if he'd been waiting for this moment. We didn't want to catch you off guard, but it seems you've left us with no choice. The words hung in the air, cold and clear. Larry swallowed hard, glancing back to see if Sarah had followed. She was just behind him, her eyes darting nervously between the men and Larry. Was she safe? Could he trust her under these conditions? What do you want? Larry forced the words out, each syllable a fight against the rising tide of fear. I don't have anything to say to you. Oh, but you do, the man's voice dripped with mockery. He stepped forward, and the pack of men moved in closer, closing off any escape. You see, Larry, your empire isn't the only one at risk. There are things you should know, secrets that go deeper than those contracts your little secretary displayed. Secrets that concern us all. Anger surged within him. The audacity. He took a step forward, desperation turning to fury. You think you can just waltz in here and threaten me? I built this company from the ground up. The leader leaned ever so slightly closer, his smirk growing wider. And look where that's gotten you. An empire built on quicksand. Rumors of betrayals, whispers behind your back, you're standing on the edge of a cliff, Larry. One little push, and it all goes tumbling down. Larry's fists clenched, adrenaline coursing through him. Nothing made sense. Were these men really here to destroy him, or was there a motive hidden beneath their threats? Just then, Sarah took a step forward, her voice slicing through the tension like a knife. What do you mean by that? What do you know? The leader turned to Sarah, and for a brief moment, Larry felt an unsettling flicker of hope. Perhaps if they worked together, but as the man opened his mouth to respond, the cacophony of shattering glass erupted from behind him. What the hell? Larry yelled, twisting around to see the source of the chaos erupting behind him. Before he could fully turn, a figure burst through the office doors, smoke curling in behind them. The atmosphere shifted sharply, like a tide turning. Larry! We have to get out of here now. The voice was frantic, drenched in desperation, muffled but urgently familiar. His heart sank as he realized it was David, the one person he trusted most. But trust felt blurred in that chaotic moment. Is it too late to go back? Within him, the thought surfaced unbidden. The leader of the men stared at him, almost amused. Looks like the circus has arrived. Let the games begin. Now, Larry realized, the stakes had escalated far beyond business deals and contractual betrayals. This was about survival. What did David know that would change everything? And as they stood on that precipice of chaos, would they leap together, or would betrayal be the final blow? Larry's eyes darted between David and the men, panic surging through him as the smoke twisted ominously around the lobby. His mind raced as he struggled to piece together what was happening. David was supposed to be the rock in this storm, yet here he stood, urging him to flee. David! What is going on? Larry shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. David, ever frantic, tore his gaze from the men. It's not safe here. We're being set up. They know everything. A chill ran down Larry's spine. Everything? The piercing blue-eyed man snickered, stepping closer. Secrets have a way of surfacing, don't they? Look at your loyal friend, David. He knows more than you think. Larry's heart pounded. Betrayal twisted within him, a poison that spread. You're lying. David wouldn't he what, Larry? Wouldn't he sell you out? Wouldn't he betray his own? The man leaned even closer, the words dripping with malice. David's face twisted in confusion, and for a fleeting moment, his vulnerability shattered Larry's anger. I had to do what I had to do, David's voice cracked, but pain and desperation swirled in his eyes. Betrayal screamed like an alarm in Larry's mind. What did you do? Not here, was all David managed, panic flooding his face as the men shifted closer. Just then, explosions of noise erupted all around, shouts and chaos merging in a cacophony of panic as employees scrambled for safe spaces. Larry caught a glimpse of Sarah, frozen, wide-eyed, her hands fidgeting as if she were about to burst into action. Sarah, stay back! Larry yelled, the instinct to protect her clouding any lingering doubt he had. Then to David, you pushed me to trust you, now show me why. David's mouth opened, but the man before Larry interrupted with a mocking laugh. You don't get it, do you? We're not the real threat. It's everything around you. Your empire is built on betrayals, and it's only a matter of time before it all implodes. Just consider it a public service. Larry's blood boiled. He took a step toward the man, but a hand clamped onto his arm. David's grip, pleading and intense. Larry, we need to go. This isn't just about us anymore. It's bigger. The man's eyes lit up with amusement as he watched their exchange. Run away, Larry. Where will you go? To the comfort of lies? Enough. Larry shouted, pulling free from David. You think you can intimidate me? I won't be pushed around. Not now, not ever. That flicker of resolve ignited something deep within him. Just then, the world exploded. The wall beside him rocked violently, sending shards of glass and debris flying through the air. The atmosphere was electric with terror as employees screamed and scattered away from the danger, chaos consuming the lobby. Now. David's urgent shout pulled Larry back. We can't stay. There's no time. Heart racing, Larry's instincts kicked in. He didn't look at the men, he didn't have time. Instead, he grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her toward the nearest exit. But the weight of anxiety surged as every step felt like an unraveling thread pulling tighter. Where do we go? Sarah gasped, confusion and fear etched on her face. Out. We need to get out. He said, forcing himself to stay composed. But deep down, the question clawed at him, could they trust David? Suddenly, another explosion echoed behind them, louder and more furious than the last. The lobby shuddered, pieces of the ceiling fell in a rain of chaos. No. We're not dying here. Larry shouted, urging Sarah forward. And just as they burst through the door, the flicker of hope turned to dread. Outside, the scene unfolded: a van parked out front with menacing shadows lurking inside, waiting in the distance. Go. He yelled to Sarah as he turned back, ready to face what awaited him. But Larry felt that lingering shadow of betrayal wrap around him, tainting every instinct to fight. What had David done to lead them to this moment? What truth lay buried beneath layers of deception? With no answers and the walls closing in, he pushed forward, but the real question loomed over them like a thundercloud: would they make it out alive, or would the betrayal wrap around him tighter than he could ever escape? The air was thick with dust and fear as Larry stumbled out into the chaos outside the lobby. The scene was bedlam. Employees were scattered like leaves in a storm, a mix of terror, confusion, and survival instincts driving them in 1,000 directions. Larry's heart raced, but he had no time to grasp the unfolding disaster. He pulled Sarah along, her hand trembling in his grip. Look! She cried, pointing at the black van parked ominously by the curb. Shadows shifted inside, menacing figures shifting in the dim light. Larry's gut twisted. The urgency in their escape clawed at him like a feral beast. Get in! He shouted, thrusting Sarah forward as he scanned their surroundings, muscles coiling and ready to react at any moment. He had to make a choice now: to confront the shadows or flee to safety. The instincts of a businessman dictated caution, but the primal urge to protect Sarah screamed louder. Larry, wait! David stumbled alongside them, panic written all over his face. We can't just— I don't have time for your excuses. Larry cut in, half-heartedly turning to face David. Minutes blurred into seconds, seconds into impending doom as another tremor shuddered through the ground. The piercing blue-eyed man from earlier materialized from the chaos, a smirk plastered on his face. You think you can escape? You missed the real show. A chorus of shouts erupted nearby, but Larry's focus sharpened on the threat before him. He took a step forward, fists clenching and teeth grinding. What do you want? Nothing you can afford, Larry. But it's fun to watch you squirm, the man taunted, eyes glinting with malice and something more. It was as if every syllable was a dagger aimed right at Larry's heart. Leave us alone. Sarah yelled, struggling against Larry's grip, her voice a mix of fear and defiance. Larry's heart twisted at the sight of her fear. That was something he couldn't let linger. Simon, he said, dragging Sarah away, back towards the van. But the moment he turned, he felt a sudden crash behind him. The explosion detonated like a thunderclap, sending debris flying in every direction. Time slowed as Larry instinctively threw himself around Sarah, shielding her from the onslaught. Fragments of glass and concrete fell like rain, and the world felt like it was collapsing in on itself. "Larry!" David shouted amid the chaos, his voice barely cutting through the noise. Larry pushed himself up, breathless and wild-eyed, searching for Sarah. She was there coughing, shaking, wide-eyed. Relief flooded through him, but it was short-lived as the urgency of the situation clamped down again. They had to move. Behind them, figures emerged from the wreck, slicking through the dust like wraiths. "Get in!" he yelled again. They dove into the van, frantic and panicked. David followed, slamming the door shut just before more blasts ripped through the area. "What's wrong with you?" Larry barked at David, unbuckling his seatbelt and turning to face him. "What did you do to get us into this mess?" "It doesn't matter, Larry. Just drive." David insisted, his hands trembling against the dashboard, eyes darting toward the window. "They're coming." He could feel the tension in the air like a live wire, but Larry's anger boiled over. "You dragged us into this. I trusted you." Suddenly, the van jolted as the engine roared to life. Larry slammed his foot down on the gas, barreling down the street, adrenaline flooding through him. The tires screeched, the sound biting into the terrified silence that hung over the scene. He glanced in the rearview mirror to see shadows chasing them, the figures they barely escaped, still looming, still pursuing. "Where do we go now?" Sarah's voice trembled, and Larry felt his resolve hardening yet again. The uncertainty loomed like a dense fog, but one thing was clear, they were not safe yet. "Just drive until we lose them," Larry said, fists curling on the steering wheel. But deep down, a creeping dread gnawed at him. What if there were no roads left to escape? What if David was the very betrayal that would end everything they fought for? As the van sped away, the shadows grew larger, and the secrets of their past loomed heavier than ever. Would the truth bring them closer to safety or closer to the abyss? The weight of what they carried together pressed down on Larry like a stone. Beyond those shadows, danger awaited, and betrayal hung in the air. They drove into the unknown, the haunting question echoing loudly: how far would they have to run to break free from the darkness that threatened to consume them all? The stench of burnt rubber filled the van, mingling with the musty odor of sweat and fear. Larry gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white and strained, as they barreled down the empty road. The city's skyline faded in the rearview mirror, swallowed by smoke and doubt. He could hear Sarah's shallow breaths beside him, each one like a fragile thread that tethered him to sanity. "Larry!" she gasped. "What if they catch us?" His heart thudded at the thought. "They won't," he promised, though inside he felt the creeping chill of uncertainty. "Just keep your eyes on the back seat. We won't let them near you again." David's face twisted in panic. What if we run out of gas? Or get stuck in a traffic jam? This was all a mistake. "Shut up!" Larry snapped, his patience fraying. "This isn't helping." Ahead, the road stretched like a dark ribbon into the night. The streetlights flickered like dying stars, casting eerie shadows that danced in the van. Larry's thoughts spiraled. What did the man want? Why had he been taunted? The knowledge felt like shards of glass, the truth capable of cutting deep. Days and nights whirled in his mind, memories of board meetings, financial reports, and glances exchanged over dinner that had turned sour. David was right, trusting him could be their downfall. Yet reverting to anger felt like letting go of the only lifeline he had left. "Do we go to the police?" Sarah's voice trembled with desperation. "Not now," Larry replied, shaking his head. "Not until we know who we're dealing with." But as they drove deeper into the city outskirts, a sprawling darkness loomed ahead, a ghost town with shuttered windows and hollow streets. It felt abandoned, as if the buildings themselves were holding their breath in suspense. "Where are you going?" David questioned, his voice laced with fear. "There should be an old safe house around here." Larry's mind flashed back to a conversation with an old friend, a place untouched by their corporate lives, where shadows hid simpler lives. I know it's risky, but we need a plan. Suddenly, a screeching sound pierced the air behind. Larry whipped his head back and saw headlights. Their pursuers were relentless, a vengeful pack hunting them down. The glow of the headlights danced wildly, closing the distance with menacing speed. Faster! Sarah urged, panic swelling in her chest. I'm going as fast as I can. Larry shouted back, adrenaline surging as he pressed the gas pedal to its floor. The van shook violently as it lurched forward, but the echoes of the road imploded in his mind. He barely registered the wind howling outside. Everything droned in a single focus: escape. Ahead, the safe house appeared like a ghostly mirage, its silhouette framed by darkness and uncertainty. Larry skidded the van to a halt in front of the dilapidated building, heart racing. They made it for now. Out! Hurry! He gasped, flinging the door open and scrambling out. They made a frantic dash towards the entrance as the roar of the pursuers grew louder, a distant engine echoing their impending doom. David stumbled with each step, fear almost paralyzing him. Once inside, the old wooden door creaked ominously behind them. Behind it, laughter erupted, dark, sinister, echoing like an unholy chorus of victors. Larry felt his pulse quicken. He spun around just in time to see the blue-eyed man from before step into the light, flanked by shadowy figures. You really thought you could hide? The man taunted, eyes glimmering with wicked delight. This is just the beginning. A frigid chill crawled down Larry's spine. They were trapped, prey in a game they didn't even understand. Larry, what do we do? Sarah's voice quivered as she edged closer, fear and urgency swirling in her big eyes. That he took a deep breath, steeling himself against the impending nightmare. We find out what he wants, and then we fight. Yet, even as he spoke, doubts gnawed at him. How could they possibly confront the shadows lurking in the corners of their lives? The question echoed ominously, forming a knot in his stomach. Was the worst still to come? The laughter echoed through the cramped space, chilling Larry to the bone. Shadows flickered in the corners, morphing as sinister figures moved closer. The blue-eyed man, his smile sharp enough to cut, stepped forward, almost savoring the moment. You really think you can march into my territory and expect a happy ending? He grinned. His voice dripped with mockery, causing a knot to twist tighter in Larry's gut. Who are you? Larry demanded, trying to project strength while his knees felt weak beneath him. The man chuckled, a low, threatening sound that sent ripples of fear through the air. The question isn't who I am, but what you did. He leaned in closer, eyes glinting with malice. You played your part so well. It's almost adorable. David swallowed hard, his wide eyes flicking between Larry and the man. What does that even mean? Larry felt momentum slipping away, the desperation clawing at him. Answer us. He commanded, but his voice quivered with uncertainty. Oh, the drama of it all. The blue-eyed man stepped back in exaggerated dismay. Here sa thought, let us rewind. You all think you're clever, hiding out here. But there's nowhere to run. I control the city, and you've already stepped into a trap you can't escape. Suddenly, a heavy silence fell over the room, punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder outside. Sarah clutched Larry's arm, her skin icy under his touch. What do we do? She whispered, the quiver in her voice barely masked by her fear. Larry's mind raced. They needed an advantage, something to turn this around. He shifted his stance, adopting a more assertive posture. That's where you're wrong, he said through gritted teeth. We're not afraid of you. The man raised an eyebrow, surprised at the sudden defiance. Oh. You must be thinking of that pretty little life you had before this mess. But let me tell you something, running 1T save you from a king of shadows. A rush of adrenaline surged through Larry. What do you want? He pressed, urgency rising. Well, the man replied, still grinning, I need you to understand, Larry. The high-stakes game you thought you were a part of was merely a warm-up. I'm here to offer you a chance to play with the big boys, or you can continue hiding behind this dilapidated door. What do you mean? David asked, confusion draping his features. The blue-eyed man waved a dismissive hand. You three have something I want. The key to fast-paced power, a dirty little secret buried deep in your corporate lives. But I can make it disappear if you join me. Sarah's eyes widened. What are you saying? You want us to work with you? Work for me. His words were honey-drenched venom, promising both riches and ruin. Or you can meet a fate worse than death. Larry swallowed a lump in his throat, weighing their options. Fear tinged with anger twisted his insides. We'll never join you, he declared, strength rising in him. You think you own us? You think we're scared? The laughter from the shadows crescendoed again, the figures around them shifting like vultures. Oh, honey, the blue-eyed man cooed, you have no idea what I'm capable of. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the house as if the world outside was angry too. It sent a bolt of panic through them, shaking the fragile wall of courage Larry had erected. The shadows applauded mockingly as he turned to Sarah and David, desperation etched on their faces. Then, as if summoned by the storm outside, a figure appeared, a tall stranger cloaked in darkness, stepping past the threshold, a glint of light catching on something sharp in their hand. The atmosphere thickened with tension. Who are you? The blue-eyed man shouted, confusion flickering across his arrogant features. Larry's heart raced as another twist unfolded before them. Where had this person come from, and what allegiance did they hold? But before he could voice his thoughts, the figure raised a hand. You're in my way now, they declared, and with that, the atmosphere cracked open, electricity pulsating in the air. The reality of danger sank heavily on Larry's chest. Had they really found an ally? Or would this only tighten the noose further? As the shadows and light clashed in agony, one question loomed larger than before: would anyone survive the fallout of this treacherous game? Time was running out. Chaos erupted. The stranger's voice hung in the air, rich with authority, drowning out the sinister laughter that had filled the room moments before. Larry's heart raced as he caught the glint of metal. The stranger held a blade, its promise of violence cutting through the tension like a knife through silk. The blue-eyed man's arrogance wavered for the first time. You think you can intimidate me with a little knife? He sneered, but his bravado flickered. The shadows surrounding him seemed to recoil, uncertain of this new threat. Intimidation isn't my goal, the stranger replied, a slight smirk breaking through the dark veil. I'm here for answers. And maybe a little bit of fun. Larry felt a rush of exhilaration mingled with fear. Could this be their lifeline, or was this new figure just another player in a game he couldn't hope to understand? Answer. For what? The blue-eyed man barked, his bravado punctured. You think you can just barge in here and dictate terms? I'll dictate whatever I want. You see, I'm not afraid of your shadowy empire. The stranger stepped closer, the blade's edge catching the flicker of dim light as it danced in a fluid motion, keeping the blue-eyed man on edge. This was it. Larry sensed they were standing on the edge of a precipice. Everything felt colossal in that moment: the shadows, the fear, and the storm hammering against the walls. He turned to Sarah and David, their faces as horrified as his. Stay behind me, he whispered, a protective instinct surging. The truth was, he had no idea what was about to happen, but he wouldn't let them face it alone. The blue-eyed man's eyes darted around like trapped animals, and Larry could see the gears turning. You think you can control the game? He seethed. I'd advise against it. Oh, sweetheart. The stranger laughed, a dark, mocking sound. Don't you know? I was playing this game before you were even a glint in your mother's eye. Then, with a swift motion, the stranger lunged forward. The blue-eyed man barely dodged, the blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. The surrounding shadows exploded into chaos, shrieks piercing through the thick atmosphere as they scrambled to find safety in the dark. That was a mistake. The blue-eyed man shouted, fury replacing his earlier confidence. The aura shifted, tension coiling tighter as he bared his teeth. "You'll pay for that. This is my domain." Larry felt heat rising, an electric charge igniting within him. "This isn't just about you anymore," he yelled, adrenaline surging. But in the back of his mind, fear tangled with defiance. Could they escape this nightmare alive? Before he could form a plan, another crash roared through the dilapidated space, shaking loose debris from the roof. Through the ensuing dust and chaos, Larry could barely make out the blue-eyed man's wrathful face, shadows dancing wildly around him as he prepared to retaliate. Enough of this. He extended his arm, fingers twitching. Shadows trembled and shifted, converging in a dark mass. Let's see what happens when darkness strikes back. Just then, Larry caught movement at the corner of his eye. The stranger was poised, ready to attack again, but Larry could see panic flashing across their face. It was then that realization dawned: they were all trapped in this web of darkness, caught in a game far beyond their understanding. "Run!" Larry shouted, suddenly gripped by a desperate urge to break free from this nightmare, but the figure hesitated, eyes darting between Larry and the impending storm of shadows. "No, we can't just let him win. We need to fight." Fight? Larry's heart thudded painfully in his chest. Could they really fight their way out of this? The shadows began to close in, and as the blue-eyed man's laughter grew louder, the tension hit a fever pitch. "Make your choice," the stranger yelled, determination laced with fear. "Will you stand with me, or will we become the next victims of his game?" The room seemed to throb with impending doom. Larry's mind raced. He had mere seconds to decide. Would he risk everything for a chance to fight back? And before he could grasp the weight of his decision, a piercing scream split the air. What would happen next? Would Larry's choice seal their fate, or turn the tide in their favor? The storm outside raged on, but inside, a different kind of tempest began to swirl. The scream echoed in the air, slicing through the chaos like the stranger's blade had moments ago. It was a high, desperate sound that sent shockwaves of fear rippling through Larry's body. It wasn't Sarah or David. It was someone else nearby, trapped in the same nightmare, a woman in a tattered dress, eyes wide with terror. "Help! Please, get me out of here!" she cried, her words spilling out like water breaking from a dam. The shadows surged forward, twisted figures that wrapped around her like a dark blanket, and the blue-eyed man reveled in their power. "Enough of this!" he bellowed, eyes gleaming with malicious glee. "You think you can save her? You can hardly save yourselves." Larry felt the world narrowing around him, pressure tightening like a noose. The energy in the room shifted again, fear was palpable, practically sparking in the air. His instincts screamed at him to flee, yet another part of him clung to the desperate need to help. "We can't just leave her." The blue-eyed man's laughter echoed, dark and twisted. "You're in over your head, boy. I control these shadows. They feed on your fear." The stranger stepped forward, blade glinting ominously. "Then let's change the flavor of the fear." With that, they lunged again, a blur of vengeance aimed at the heart of darkness itself. The room trembled as the shadows warped, swirling around the blade, but not without a counterattack of their own. More screams erupted, a chorus of terror as shadows lashed out, dark tendrils aimed at the stranger. The air thickened, saturated with dread, wrapping around Larry and the others like a cold fog. Larry's heart thundered in his chest. Could they really fight this? "Sarah! David!" he shouted, his voice breaking through the din of chaos. "Get the woman. Pull her out." They nodded, though fear clouded their eyes. They darted towards the trapped woman, shadows snapping just inches from their skin. Every footfall felt like a countdown, seconds ticking away as Larry stood frozen, torn between the battle erupting in front of him and the desperate rescue behind him. The stranger parried a third dark lash, grit and determination etched on their face. "You're not alone," the stranger shouted, throwing a glance at Larry. "Get in the game." Time stretched unbearably as Sarah and David reached the woman, gripping her hands tightly. The shadows pushed back, but the trio was determined, adrenaline fueling their flight. On three! David yelled. The woman nodded frantically, tears streaming down her face. 1, 2, 3. They pulled together with all their might, the shadows recoiled, screeching as a sudden rift of light broke through the darkness. The air hummed with energy, a force of will echoing within their hearts. They were breaking free, just as the woman was tugged to safety. The blue-eyed man roared with fury, his power snapping like a whip. You can't escape me. But they pressed on, the light amplifying their resolve. The stranger's blade caught this newfound energy, slicing through the shadows with a fierce determination that sent tremors through the room. Now! The stranger yelled, rallying whatever strength remained among them. Let us finish this. But Larry hesitated, a nagging doubt twisting in his gut. They had rescued the woman, but was it enough? The blue-eyed man still loomed large, a dark specter surrounded by swirling shadows. What were they really up against? Before he could voice his concern, the shadows surged again, thrumming with anger and revenge. The stranger was right, they had to act now, but what if victory came with an even darker price? Larry! Sarah's voice pierced through his thoughts as the shadows twisted ominously. What do we do? As the blue-eyed man twisted his hand, shadows plunging toward them in a frenzy, it hit Larry like a thunderbolt. This was no ordinary battle, it was about more than survival. It was about all the choices they had yet to make, and the sudden realization dawned in him, the real game had just begun. With time running thin and shadows clawing at their heels, the fight for freedom felt like a daunting climb up an unscalable mountain. Were they ready to face the truth that lay on the other side? The ground beneath them trembled, and with the crashing of debris from the roof, Larry's resolve hardened. It was now or never. Together! He shouted, raising his voice above the chaos. We stand together. But would their unity be enough to pierce through the darkness, or was this just the opening act in a much darker scenario lurking ahead? As shadows whipped past, Larry braced to find out. The shadows swirled chaotically, frantic for a return to dominance as their master roared in fury. Larry felt every nerve in his body electrified by fear, but it transformed into something more potent, a primal instinct to protect those around him. Together! He shouted again, the rallying cry stirring the air with a hurricane of hope against the choking dread. The blue-eyed man sneered, darkness pooling like a cloak around him, but his bravado wavered. You really think you can overcome the darkness? He seethed. For every word he uttered, the shadows retorted, twisting and writhing, threatening to swallow them whole. They were all together now, their hands linked, David anchoring on one side, Sarah on the other, and the woman behind them, trembling but alive. The stranger stood at the front, the blade gleaming like a beacon against the consuming dark. There was no going back, it was a moment that demanded everything. Let us do this. The stranger bellowed, and with that, they leaped forward. The room exploded in light as the stranger slashed at the angered shadows, cutting a path through the menacing dark. The shadows howled, retreating temporarily, and that flicker of hope ignited a fierce resolve. Larry's heart raced as they pressed on, each step an act of defiance against the forces that sought to consume them. Keep moving. David urged, his voice steady. The air felt charged, crackling with their collective determination as they surged forward together. They reached the woman, who gasped in disbelief at their unity. You're saving me? She stammered, hope glistening in her eyes. Yes. Sarah affirmed, her courage rallying. Now, together, we fight. Just then, the blue-eyed man lunged again, shadows coiling around him like a poisonous mist. You think this is a game? How naive. His voice dripped contempt, echoing through the chamber like thunder. But Larry felt an anger ignite within him, a determination born from the injustice of it all. You've underestimated us. He shouted back, feeling the shadow's weight weaken. The stranger charged, blade dancing with light, turning the dark mist into wisps as if it were smoke. Every swing felt like the shedding of chains, and with each slice, too, came the echoes of all their sacrifices. "We want to be your pawns," Larry shouted. Now fully emboldened, the tide began to turn. As they fought together, pushing deeper through the chaos, something shifted in the air. The blue-eyed man faltered as the combined light of their efforts pierced through his dark facade. "This is impossible," he spat, anger spilling from his words like acid. "Nothing is impossible if we unite," Larry yelled, feeling the fire of truth in his chest. And then, a surge of energy swelled through them, a bright flash slicing through the dark wall around the blue-eyed man and crystallizing into an unwavering beam of light. "No!" he screamed, scrambling back as the reality of their resolve bore down on him. The light enveloped him, shadows dissipating like vapor under the sun. "Together, we are stronger," the stranger shouted, and with one final thrust, they pressed forward, the light exploding forth and washing over the room, engulfing the darkness like dawn dispelling night. The air cleared, shadows retreating in hissed whispers until only a mundane silence remained. They stood together, breathless and alive, a fierce bond forged in the heat of chaos. The stranger lowered their blade, a content smile crossing their lips. "You did it," they murmured, casting a glance at the blue-eyed man who now lay powerless on the ground, shadows retreating in defeat. "This isn't over, remember that," he spat, but his defiance felt hollow. Breath escaped in ragged gasps as Larry turned to his friends, relief washing over him. Sarah's eyes sparkled with tears, and he could see David visibly relaxing. The weight of betrayal lifted, they had faced the abyss and emerged victorious. Together as they stepped out into the new dawn, spilling through the remnants of the dark, fresh air filled their lungs, grounding them as promise rested on the horizon. "What now?" the woman asked, her voice a gentle echo of hope. "Now," Larry said, feeling the warmth of possibility wrap around him, "we rebuild. We take back what is ours and fight for what's right." Sarah nodded firmly. "Whatever it takes. We'll stand together." And with that, as the city bathed in golden light around them, the team found strength in uncertainty, resolving to face whatever came next not as individual players, but as a cohesive force that could weather all storms. They had survived the shadows, and now, they would thrive in the light. So if you found this story gripping and want to know what happens next, you need to subscribe now. Hit that red button and don't miss the next exclusive stories that unfold. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and share the love. And don't forget, flood the comments section with your thoughts, your reactions, and theories about what's to come. Finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and join our amazing community. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.